Hi, I'm Ann Griffin. I'm a product leader and product coach, and you're back for another week of the Product Mind Lab, where I'm really excited because this week we have a special guest. We have Tom Rosinski. He is the founder and CEO of Prompt Engineering, the company behind Xtel Search, an AI powered search platform for retail e commerce, which is really exciting. I've seen some of the stuff that he's been working on. Also, Tom and I used to work together at a digital ad agency building apps, websites. Called the place was called Huge. We worked with really, I'll say, really fun brands, everything from Royal Caribbean, American Express, other major brands at the time when a lot of these things on the web were like pretty new experiences. And so Tom actually has a long history in e-commerce, and seeing him actually try to use AI to power that has been such a learning experience for me. So, welcome, Tom. Thank you so much for being on the Product Mind Lab.
Yeah, very excited to be here. Yeah, as you said, I was at agencies for about a decade, and we built some of the first big e-commerce sites, and it's just crazy to see how early in the 2010s to now how much things have changed. How e-commerce has become like a very optimized kind of format, but it maybe has left the customer behind, and that's one of the problems we're trying to solve with Xtol and our search solution. But that's not why we're here today, is it?
No, Tom actually. So when I started doing a lot of the AI prototyping, that's also when I saw Tom actually start doing AI prototyping. And a lot of that actually tied into his business and how he was doing business pitches. And so I have a lot of questions for him today about AI prototyping. I know this is a topic a lot of you are very excited about. And honestly, anytime I talk about it, you guys are watching the videos repeatedly. So we're back talking about it again today. And also, we'll talk about some of Tom's favorite tools. But Tom, I want to start with this question. As you're doing business development for your startup, how is AI prototyping changing the way you're doing business development from even 7 months ago?
Yeah, happy to talk about that because it's been absolutely wild. So just as a context for your audience, Prompt Engineering is a productized consulting firm, right? We have a product called Xtel Search, which is a pay per search SaaS product. But we're working within the space to kind of help companies understand and apply LLMs and Gen AI to their business models. So that involves a lot of just, typical agency type pitching, workshops, trying to communicate ideas and vision, trying to get paid for all of that, but trying to really set yourself out from the crowd in a space that's like has a lot of rapid new entrants.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of noise and trying to be the signal in the middle of all that noise.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been pitching agency stuff for a long time. I worked as a product manager at Huge, but after that, I joined a product shop called Postlight, where I was running new business development as much as I was helping the teams bring their projects to life. And we pitched and built beautiful decks, and we had designers come in and create awesome templates, and we would talk about how cool it would be if we could make it a little bit more interactive. Our pitch templates were, beautiful imagery, very articulate problem statements, really helping the customer, if they had the time to read it, come to terms with, how we could help them approach their problem. And the reason we took that, step is we didn't know how else to say, hey, we're good at this stuff,
Yeah.
right? We wanted to get paid for our work. And besides the glossy deck, there's not a lot you can do to show someone, the proof, the glossy deck that shows other projects. But they want to know how are you going to do it for me? I'm your customer now. I'm the important one. It's great what you did for Morgan Stanley, and it's great what you did for who knows, the Gap or whatever. But me, I'm a smaller business than them. It may not apply to me, and I need a solution that's really specific, right? And we would always kind of like reach the limits of that and say, we'd have these meetings where like, wouldn't it be cool if we could do the deck as like an interactive site? And we had all these big ideas, and none of it really got past the PDF.
Yeah.
And even as we started, prompt engineering, we were doing the same thing. Now the decks got a little bit better. We have pitch.com. We can track analytics. We can see what
Yeah.
people are, focused on or interested in. But in pitching the LLMs, we realized like it's really hard to get the idea across of what it would be like unless you're an expert, unless you've sat and used these tools to some extent. I mean, you don't have to be an expert, and I don't think anyone's an expert quite yet, although, my team and I use them every day.
Yeah.
Um, but as you use them, you get a sense, wow, these things can really do it all, right? But if you're trying to tell someone at business A, like, they can do it all, trust me, it's hard to really communicate that dynamic content, that the verisimilitude of, the answers, how lifelike and realistic and dynamic it all seems is hard to grasp.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It gives that you're able to pitch using the prototype instead of this, flat two-dimensional thing of work you did for somebody else.
Exactly. So yeah, you're onto it. So we started using some of these AI prototyping tools to expand on what we're actually talking about, and to use them as real life clickable demonstrations of the experience that we intend to build. And I want to talk about how my team, who's full of engineering experts, I'm kind of the only product guy on the team, but how they feel about it, which is they're not as confident as I am.
Okay.
Versus how I feel as the CEO and lead pitcher, being able to go in and have a bunch of ideas and creative ways of applying some of the Gen AI technology that we want, or that we see as a good fit for the customer, and to actually show it. So what we've been doing is we became power users of Bolt.new, which is, I know you and your audience, you've talked about Replit a lot.
Yeah.
Bolt is, it's, I mean, I don't know the differences yet, to be honest.
I would say the design is a little bit better. It's not as robust as Replit, but I would say it's like a good medium between like the designs of like V0, but the capabilities of Replit. But
I got to give Replit a shot.
Things, yeah.
So with Bolt, it connects to an IDE called StackBlitz, which like a kind of like a cursor-like environment. You can swap back and forth between like a left rail prompt only interface and an IDE where you can fork and make specific tweaks to the code. And I feel like I need a build up here, but it was so exciting the first time I used it, because I was able to really put together I typed in my own prompt, and I got an app, and the app worked, right? Like I couldn't believe it as a product manager.
The first time I had that experience.
And then I quickly ran into all the frustrations, right? So the first cut looks great, and you're like, that does it all, but let me fix that small thing.
Yeah, I mean that actually ties into what I wanted to ask you next. Is like, well, what are the most frustrating things about AI prototyping? Because I talk it up a lot on here, and a lot of people are like, oh my God, it's the future, and I do believe it is a very integral part of the future, but like we don't always talk about this was really annoying part of AI prototyping.
There's an excellent business model in here for people who are kind of going to pay, like, charge by token for the amount of changes that you want. Because what happens is it generalizes. So when you give it a prompt, as good as your prompt is, it makes a bunch of assumptions and connections to tie together what you want based on what you say you want, right? And those guesses sometimes are amazing and work out incredibly. Like I found several interesting features I would have never comprehended to do that way, right? Until the AI thought it up.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you want to make small targeted tweaks, it's dumb. It's so stupid. And you can ruin something that's been working well by trying to change a small element just on the UI, for instance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is unbelievably frustrating. And there's no way to tell it to, lock certain files, or don't touch this, or use this front end, but only change the back end. There's a lot of like sophisticated things I wish we could be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, earlier this week, I saw someone on Twitter say they accidentally destroyed, a project they've been working on for months while using Cursor, because they asked Cursor for a small update on the UI and it made a bunch of other changes. And now I guess they weren't using GitHub, but they have no way to revert it back to an earlier version, and it's painful. I would say Replit does have a way to roll back the code, but unless you're like looking through the code, you don't necessarily know what exactly all the changes were that just happened on the back end. So it's like you can see the UI changes, but to see the back end changes, you really do need to actually look into the code.
It's going to require a new skill set, right? Like the ability to just keep track of diffs, to ideate from a product standpoint, and know what you don't have to know how to code, right? And that's the problem that I think with my engineering team is they're like, this isn't code. And I'm like, I don't care. It works. It's what I need right now,
Yeah, absolutely.
But Bolt does it okay too. Like it has
Yeah.
bookmarks and you can say, hey,
Yeah.
remember this spot, or you can ask it, should we fork? We're about to try something risky. And it
Yeah.
can make recommendations along those lines. But it's occasionally you'll just lose hours worth of work by
Oh,
making a change to something else. And, it does all these kind of shortcuts to help it.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
those are some kinks that need to be ironed out.
Yeah, absolutely. On the other side of that though, what has been your favorite thing about using these tools? And maybe it's something that's like really obvious since I know you and I are both fans of it, but what's your favorite thing?
Well, so for one of the demos that we did recently, we're working with a large automobile manufacturer, and we built a search product, and we knew that they wanted to work with their used vehicle inventory search. And so we were kind of just doing some upfronting and being like, besides the search, what else would you like to see? And they hit us with, well, actually, we don't really want to see the search. We want to see how LLMs would work throughout our entire experience.
Mm,
And I was like, ooh, okay, yeah, we'll come up with some good ideas. But with Bolt, I was actually not only able to come up with a few ideas, I was able to show them live how content on their site would be changed using just Bolt
ooh,
and just prompts,
that's very cool.
which, like, it had a live integration with OpenAI. So I could do my demo, I could change settings, I could show them things like content updating in real time. We could have conversations. They were asking about content, trust and safety, and things like that. So we were able to iterate in real time about how this would actually work on an experience that was just like their existing site. And
Yeah,
we did that by just taking a screenshot of their site and asking Bolt to build it.
that's amazing. I think that's one of my favorite things about these tools is the fact that it can really, I'll say, imitate a specific style if you like it, which I know, I'm not trying to steal people's designs, but especially if you're, great for biz dev, if you're like, hey, I need to make it look and feel like this other site so they can really visualize it. Because I know when we were at Huge, one of the big things is like the wireframes actually had to be pretty high fidelity because otherwise customers would be like, I don't really get it. And so this really just takes it to another level.
I mean, the type of prototyping that we talked about in the past to get buy-in, to get acceptance, how necessary it felt as product managers to have a clickable prototype or a
Yeah.
Figma document. This is like that, except one, we were able to build that car demo site in about half a day,
Yeah.
right? So there was no back and forth with designers. There was no deciding what the design strategy would be.
Yeah.
We took what they had and we just did it again. And the fact that we could turn that around really rapidly meant we had more time to like focus on, like, they had wanted a site-wide experience, so we built a few more examples in the time that we had bought, where we would have had to spend we were talking about this earlier, like
Yeah.
two weeks just to have a design that we could put together for a
Exactly.
prototype just in case, which was a tremendous amount of effort compared to what it took.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So you and I have talked about this offline a bit, but I mean, how do you feel like these tools and AI prototyping are going to impact the traditional agency? Because you already talked about, how we used to do things and how much longer it used to take, and um, you know, really like what is this doing to this like agency model where agencies, yes, there were some boutique ones, but they were pretty big and they all had holding companies. Um, this seems to, maybe I'm wrong, eat into a large chunk of some of the services that you used to offer or still offer.
I mean, things will have to change. The main thing we're seeing, just as we look at the industry, is the junior level folks, the UX designers, the code school programmers are just less and less necessary. It's not that they couldn't do what these LLM tools do slightly better. It's that they do it much more slowly, right? It's a resource
Yeah.
that you need. So that's one consequence, I think, that's sort of obvious, but the impact of which is very ambiguous, right? Because if you take away those lower level of junior folks who are learning on the job, and you say, hey, trusted manager, you just oversee that, when that manager leaves, where's the people who have been through the trenches, who know how UX should work because they've did it badly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So those rules change. But I think I was thinking about this question before I joined, and I was thinking the real big difference potentially isn't just for folks like us, right? I
Yeah.
think this is a real obvious tool for product, and
Yeah.
it makes product in an agency much more prominent, because we can do the things
Mm.
fast. We know the business and we know the tech and we know the, the
Yeah.
structure of an application. But it's creating an opportunity, I think, for account people. At Huge, we used to
Mhm.
say accounts is strategy, right? There was very little difference between trying to sell new business and trying to help a business, guide their strategy.
Yeah.
But if you can give an account manager who's one, understands the business, knows what the client wants, and two, has a sense about technology or strategy, one of these tools, they on their own can drive business in such an effective way,
Yeah.
especially if you've had a long-term relationship with one of those
Yeah.
companies and they trust you and you can just sit and show them some of the ideas in real time, with a day or two turnaround. I think that's going to be tremendous for selling new work.
Yeah. I mean, part of me feels like the agency world would resist this, but I almost wonder if it would actually make sense for them to collapse product and account management, and where it's like product, you're also responsible for selling in the work, because if you're, you know, truly product, you understand this customer's, like, you understand the client's customers, right? You understand how to solve the problem for them, so you should be able to speak that language to the client in theory.
I think, at digital agencies specifically,
Yeah.
looking back at the entire agency model and media and print, and, not a lot's going to change there. And I think that
Yeah.
what you're describing is an interesting change that I think is probably inevitable.
Yeah. And we'll see if they actually do it, because it's a, I will say, a really interesting, like, digital agency specifically, I think is like, was a really great model, but I think it'll be really interesting to see how they fare, given that I think there, with AI tools, there's a lot of opportunity for much smaller agencies to pop up that don't have the overhead of the traditional agency model. And a lot of them are, they're public now, they're part of public holding companies, so there's a certain expectation of the type of revenue they're able to pull in, especially for the headcount they have.
I think you're making a really profound point, and I hope that Publicis isn't listening to this podcast right now because yeah, that overhead, that revenue target, margins are going to shrink, turnaround time is going to shrink. So long projects that take 6 months, we cut the first 3 months in half, and suddenly where's those billings going to go? You can try to generate new business, and if you get good at it, right? Gen AI, in my opinion, is about to like take a huge leap forward, not just
Yeah.
because what we've been using for the last year is catching up with what people are able to understand, but it's actually surpassing it. And
Yeah.
there's this kind of like, we're mutually pushing where the product can go, and it's all happening so fast.
Yeah, and I've seen more and more, like, kind of more AI prototyping agencies pop up. And I remember at the time when digital agencies were new, it was because the talent to build something that was both truly functional and truly beautiful was so rare back then, that you would look. I remember the first time I saw Razorfish's website, really early on in my career, and I was just like, I want to build beautiful things like that. And now I'm just like, okay, I've seen a website like that a million times. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's not as impressive.
Although I will say this, so the agency, um, one of the agencies that built this automotive clients website, I have a connection with, and I was showing what we had done with Bolt, and they had actually architected the pages, and I was like, "What do you think?" And they're like, "Well, this is fine, like, cool, it works, that's great,
Yeah.
but ours is beautiful." And I do truly think that the prototyping apps are not at the level of doing fully production ready,
Yeah.
beautiful experiences yet. I do think
I
it's
do agree
reserved
with that.
in the kind of pitch space.
Yes.
So we still need excellent designers. We still need, 10x coders who can whip together a beautiful experience that scales, and everyone can love. But when you're trying to make a sale and you're trying to like shape a product or a pitch to exactly what someone wants, you can do that really quickly and really rapidly get a
Yes.
response.
Very true. Very true. Tom, this has been amazing. Anything else you want to leave the audience with before we wrap up today?
Um, if you're interested in learning more about either how to use these kind of prototyping tools, or what kind of services we can do with those tools for you and your business, or if you're at an agency and you're looking for a partner to kind of get you onboarded with some of these tools, how to use them and how to fit them into your sales process, we're very excited to help out. And if you're a business thinking about, hey, I want to sell up LLMs to someone, reach out. Going to plug the agency here. We're really excited to share our knowledge and understanding of these products with folks and help sell them to your organization because they're groundbreaking.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. This has been so helpful, and I hope everyone took something away about how they can be using AI prototyping regardless of what their field or discipline is. Thank you so much. Have a
Thank
good
you.
one.
It was great, Anne. I look forward to talking to you again.